It shouldn't be the technical hurdles that make it impossible to share your message.
Pro Tools was going to be the end of music. That's it. There's no more skill involved.
Also the synthesizer.
With apologies to the pre-chopped onion industry. Thank you for sponsoring this episode. But
Get to it fast. Right here on the Anycast. Make it strong, make it last. Right here on the Anycast.
Okay, everybody. I am very excited today. Chris, where in the world are you joining me from today, by the way?
I am in Austria. I'm in Graz. That's the second biggest city in Austria. And I'm happy to join you, Matt. Amazing to be here.
Thank you so much for taking the time in your day. And for those who don't know who you are, where you came from, what you're selling, as I like to say, give us 2 minutes of a pitch so that people can fast forward 2 minutes and then we can get into the good stuff.
Awesome. My name is Chris. I am an audio engineer, musician, producer, and I recently joined Auphonic, the audio post-production web tool, where I took the role of head of strategy, meaning that I do all the marketing, business development, strategic partnerships, and basically networking and getting the name and the face out there. It's a software company. We provide automatic audio production. So if you upload your voice file, you can have it leveled, silence removed, noise removed, reverb removed. So basically all the tasks that a audio engineer would normally do, you can do automatically now. We do transcription, and basically we want to provide a toolbox for people in the content creator space.
Awesome. So almost everybody, it seems, that ends up working for a podcast production company, whatever that looks like, almost everybody comes from podcasting. And before we got started, I liked your phrase. You're an eternal podcast lurker.
Yeah.
So how does an eternal lurker move to the front stage and be the tip of the spear for a podcast audio production company?
Yeah, that's such a cool development, actually, because I used to be like the sound guy beside the stages where all the content creators and all the interesting people were talking. And I always, I'm a rock singer, I'm a guitarist, and I always wanted to do metal. I always wanted to do metal shows, and I was a front of house engineer for those shows. But as time progressed, my career changed a bit, and it's became much more like Christmas parties and German Schlager stars and being on tour with that kind of music. And my heart really said, nah, I'm in for a change, basically. So call it fate, call it luck. But right at that time when I thought I need a change of career, Auphonic offered the exact position that I hold now, meaning the marketing business development side of things. So I applied. And now I'm here, which is basically, I took it from the sidelines. I've been watching and listening to podcasts for years now. Back in school, one of my, a great computer science teacher showed us the emergence of Web 2.0 and podcasts and blogs and people contributing on the internet. Yeah, and it seems like I've come full circle from being on the sidelines supporting to being on the front lines supporting. It's kind of cool.
I feel like every third person in my life mixed monitors at some point somewhere.
Yeah.
It's interesting for that as a background because obviously audio engineers are pretty snobby about audio, and so I feel like that has to play a part in you getting involved in like I want to make people's audio better because I hate this and this and this and this.
Yeah.
Do you get satisfaction just from the knowing that you're cleaning up people's audio, even if you're not even involved in producing it or listening to it?
Yeah, I kind of do, because that was my main pleasure when I was mixing concerts. I could make them sound the way I want them to. So, that's a cool solo going on. I can push it. I can add some spice. I can do some effects, and I can make it sound the way I want them to. And I always thought that, I always thought that I had taste. So I was like giving my taste to the people. Know what I mean?
Expand on that a little bit. So I know what you mean, but why was that important, right? Like a lot of people have taste and they're okay just keeping it to themselves. Why was it important to you that other people got to hear your version of how that solo should go?
Yeah, it's maybe the snobbish part of being an audio engineer, because I thought, well, let's do it right. If my standards are fulfilled, I'm for sure going to fulfill the standards of many people in the crowd, I always thought, because I was going into the show with a high standard. I wanted to deliver like expert quality sound on every show that I mixed. Yeah, and I thought if I walk out at the end of the night and think, yeah, that sounded cool, then it would have sounded cool, basically.
Mm. So what's your number one pet peeve then if you hear a poorly produced podcast in your mind? What is that thing that makes it poorly mixed or poorly produced?
That's so hard to say. Like, there's so much esotericism going on with audio and so much half knowledge. What I think is obvious is a lack of effort. Like, if you see that people don't try, that is obvious. Bad quality, yeah, happens, but a lack of effort is obvious.
Yeah. And so how important is it to you, I mean, in your day job anyway, that you're able to support creators who might want to have better audio? It's not an effort thing, it's a knowledge thing, right? Not everybody has either the background or the resources to go and pay somebody who knows what they're doing. How does Auphonic play into that?
Yeah, we're providing accessibility, basically. So what we want to do is remove a lot of these hurdles in the beginning. Like you have to, if you want to start a podcast, usually you want to grow, to inspire people, to share your thoughts, to spread your message. But what you have to do is like focus on which microphone am I using? Am I using the correct audio interface? Is my gain set correctly? What's the lighting? What's the video part of it? What's the set design and all that? There's so many thoughts going on that distract you from the actual thing that you want to do. And what we try to do with Auphonic is remove much of that burden. So if you manage to record something pretty much properly, you can drag and drop it into Auphonic and you can get a studio quality result. That is what we aim to do. Make it as easy for people as possible to produce quality sound. Yeah.
Yeah. And does that offend the snob in you? the fact that it's there's no audio engineer manually moving knobs around. That has to bug you a little bit as an audio guy.
That's an excellent question, actually. The cool thing about Auphonic is that we have a lot of audio engineers working at the company. We have in Graz, there at the Technical University and the University for Music and Performing Arts, there's a shared study program called Electrical Engineering and Audio Engineering. And there you learn a lot of computer science, programming, signal processing, room acoustics, physics behind sound, also the musical parts of it. And we have the luxury of having tons of these students and tons of experts in this field in our city. So there's actually a ton of very, very capable audio engineers working at the product and trying to automate the things that you usually would do as a producer. And that's really cool to watch, actually.
Yeah, there must be a ton of, like I said, I think it's equal parts. There's a ton of like, wow, this thing that used to be really important to me, is now a button click. But that's the nature of the technology curve, right?
Yeah.
So I we're in this cycle, not just with podcasts, but there's this, AI automation wave around audio and my brain. I grew up in a musical family. I think of, Pro Tools was going to be the end of music.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like that was it. Like if it's not on analog, it's all done. That's it. There's no more skill involved.
And also the synthesizer.
And the synthesizer, right? But like their audio engineers are going to be out of business. There won't be any audio engineers. We have Pro Tools. And sure enough, there are just as many audio engineers now using Pro Tools as there were audio engineers recording on tape. So it's like,
probably
the death
even more.
Yeah, exactly. The death of the audio engineer, was greatly overstated when that transition was happening. I feel like the same thing is also probably happening around AI, although it is different. But so that's on the one hand, right? Is the like, the skill of this has been, reduced to, the lowest common denominator that a machine could do. On the flip side, like I said, to the actual, for people that just want to hear great audio because of whatever their esoteric, desires are, you get it all the time. I imagine, I don't want to put something on your roadmap, but, as I say it, I'm
please do.
I was like, now that I think of it, there could be a podcast app for audio snobs, right? Where you get to you apply the settings as the listener for how you want to listen to the podcast, right?
Yeah, that would be cool though.
Yeah, like I just want to give me the raw audio, and I want to listen to it like this. Take that, producer.
Custom styles.
Custom style, exactly. For the average customer, though, for the average podcaster, they just want to get content out in the world, right?
Yeah.
Or, there's pride around the production side of things, but people don't probably want to get into the weeds that much, right? Like I imagine people probably log in, they go, what are the most common settings? What is the most popular way somebody wants to mix? And can I do that? Yes?
Easy solutions, yeah. And that's what it's supposed to be. Because like I said before, the accessibility is just growing. And that's the cool part about it. Because I think most people have something cool to say and something inspiring to share. And there's tons of knowledge out there. But it shouldn't be the technical hurdles that make it impossible to share your message, basically.
So let's pivot from there a little bit, because now that we know it's not the technical hurdles. As a lifetime lurker, what do you find? There's a lot of people listening to this that probably are, to borrow an Americanized baseball analogy, just trying to get the bat off their shoulder to record something and put it out there. What did you find the hard part about not really committing to putting stuff out in this format, especially as a musician, where you're obviously comfortable putting out content in a different format?
Yeah. You mean as a podcast?
Yeah.
Yeah. It wasn't actually that hard. It's just the continuity part of it. It's sitting down week after week, recording stuff, having conversations, inviting people, all the organizational part. It was, besides running a band as basically a hobby, it was too much organizational work that was going on. And I think people can relate to that because, like I said before, you want to have conversations, you want to spread your message, your word, but all the parts that surround it, is the organization, the technical details and all that, that's not what the end result shows. And that's not what the end result should show. It's not a behind-the-scenes video. It's a podcast, and the information is in the foreground. But there's so many steps going on besides it.
I think it's a medium that just you end up like that, right? Like the power of podcasting is that anybody can do it. You can be independent. There is no, industry machinery, affecting the art. But the reality is most of the industry machinery is around sourcing guests, scheduling, doing the audio cleanup afterwards and stuff like that. Like I actually, talking about music, I just saw a thing on YouTube maybe yesterday of Richie Sambora talking about the difference between when he was younger, the difference between being in Bon Jovi and being the Richie Sambora band, which he was at the age of 19. And he's like, best thing about being in Bon Jovi, I didn't have to book the sound. I didn't have to book the lights. I didn't have to book the trailers. Right? Like the logistics in any business, that's the behind the scenes backstage machinery that's really what makes it possible to have, whatever you're putting out there. So
there's tons of amazing people out there doing fantastic jobs regarding that. But if you're doing this indie stuff, and that's actually what I think that podcasting emerged to be, is like having your own radio show, basically being able to say what you want when you want it, being a bit out there. That's what it makes possible. But that's also the main hurdle, I believe. You have to do all the organizational stuff as well.
Yeah, it's pirate radio.
Yeah,
right. Which, again, there is power in that, but that's also, the one interesting thing about radio that I think about when it comes to podcasting is there's only a certain number of frequencies in every market. So even when you're trying to broadcast pirate radio or student radio, you can only have X number of broadcasts going at a time. Today podcast is, I wouldn't even begin to guess how many podcasts I could choose to go listen to right now if I went to the Apple Store. It has to be, if it doesn't end in 1 million, it's got to be pretty high in the hundreds of thousands now. And I think that's a hard thing too, right? When you start to release something, if you're not crystal clear on who your audience is, and that means like the 7 people that you actually want to listen to it, Like, you're not just going to put it out and produce it independently, and next thing you're Joe Rogan and people are paying you. No, that's probably, not dissimilar actually to the music industry curve, right? Which is, not every band is going to get signed to a major label deal, and not every band is going to, get major, I guess what used to be radio airplay, now Spotify play. But that doesn't mean that you can't locate your core group of fans who are really going to love what you do.
Exactly, yeah. And I think it's also about evolution. So with music, there's stuff going on. People get inspired. Like bands rise and fall. They make creative contributions. They develop the art form, I'd say. And you get inspired by that. So we had the luxury. So my band, Prine, we do prog sludge. So it's proggy metal sludgy band. And we're inspired by Mastodon and Baroness. And these bands basically trailblazed into a subgenre. They created their own subgenre that we have the luxury of inhabiting now, basically. So people have heard this kind of music before, and we have the luxury of creating our own stuff within the niche. And that's with podcasting and with art in general, I believe. There's evolutions going on, there's trends, there's stuff emerging, there's stuff going away, there's the underground, there's the overground, there's major labels, there's indie labels, and all of that is a really cool ecosystem to contribute with, too.
Where do you see, like, obviously on the biz dev side, you're sort of seeing the macro trends in podcasting. Where do you see podcasting, say, 5 years from now as it relates today, both in terms of like whether it stays indie, what does production look like 5 years from now compared to today? Like, if you had to put on your future glasses, what do you see?
That's a great question. Like, I see a shift in many media strategies. Like, a lot of corporations and politicians set their minds on podcasting now, because what I believe makes this format unique is the personal connection you build with the people that are on the podcast. They are thoroughly vetted. There's conversation going on. You can't be real across multiple podcasts if you're not real, basically. And I think that this is what will differentiate it from other media, like from short form media or from specially produced content, that it's just genuine human connection. And I believe the growth that we've seen in recent years will continue. Video podcasting is a thing, but much more in the US than in Germany, as far as I've seen. In Germany and in Europe in general, I believe audio podcasting is still bigger, but in the US, video podcasting is rising much faster. The entry barrier for creating content is gonna decrease still, I believe, with equipment being much more accessible, with AI tools helping spread content, create social media posts, transcriptions, show notes, and all that. So it's gonna be easier, I believe. It's not gonna be easier to become one of the top podcasters, I think, but it's gonna get progressively easier to join the scene and to join to spread the word and get your message out there. Yeah,
it's interesting you talk about the ease of production, because I feel like there's like a curve that probably everything goes through, but that, like, I particularly see with podcasting, which the analogy I draw is to like video streaming, right? So like 15 years ago, it was a novelty if you could turn on your television and there would be pictures that you got from the internet, right? You're like, oh my God, there's moving pictures on my TV. Amazing. And, a week ago, everybody's like, what do you mean I can't watch this fight in 4K live? Why is it buffering? This is totally... So there's this expectation curve.
Yeah. Yeah, true.
And it's funny you say that, like, it'll get easier to make a podcast, because I think like 10 years ago, I remember people were like, oh, there's a service where you can make a podcast. Here's a phone number, you call in. And it records it and it spits it out as an MP3 when you're done.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it can't get easier than that. There's nothing that's going to be easier than that. But the problem was the quality sucked.
Yeah.
And so 10 years ago, people were like, oh my God, this is great. I get to hear from this person. I get to hear their thoughts. This is amazing. And then, fast forward 10 years and it's like, what do you mean there's background noise? How can there be background noise in this thing that I'm listening to? How dare they?
Yeah. Yep. That's a really good point. Like 4K premium quality content is what YouTube expects for free videos. Actually, that's true nowadays.
Yeah. So like, I feel like that's where we are on that curve, right? Is like, it's not necessarily that it's going to be easier to make a podcast. It's going to be easier to make a podcast that meets the standards of people who go, I expect high quality production. I expect great audio. I expect clear video.
But do you think we're going to go into saturation from this point, or that the curve decreases again?
I don't know if saturation is the word. I know nobody is hoping today that their FM radio starts to sound like more like AM again.
Mm-hmm.
So like once people have a baseline or nobody's like, wow, I wish my Netflix came in 480p again.
Yeah.
So like it becomes the baseline, and I would say if I'm drawing the analogy back to that, I don't think anybody cares if their YouTube video they're watching is 4K or 1080p. They do care that it's not 480p.
Yeah, that is true.
Right? So there's a minimum bar, and as long as you're above the bar, that's probably all that matters. And then you have your unique audio engineers. They're like, oh my God, what do you mean you mixed this mono? This is unlistenable.
Yeah.
But everybody else just needs it to be clear. They're going to listen to it in their car anyway, which is a terrible, listening experience, let's say. So I think there's a bar that people have, and the bar is constantly shifting up. But it doesn't match, right? Nobody's bar today is 8K video.
Not yet.
Right? Nobody's bar is going, oh my God, if this isn't in 8K, I refuse to watch it.
Yeah.
My bar, personally, I refuse to watch anything that's not in HD, though. Like, if it's an SD, I'd rather not watch it. I don't care what it is. I don't care how interesting it is. I don't want to watch it.
Feel you. Yeah, there's a point with the bar that's raising. There's a great South Park special about that, too.
What's that one?
Raising the bar. Like, they said the bar for human decency has sunk too deep down into the ocean, and James Cameron has made it his mission to build a submarine and go down and raise the bar again. It's like one of my favorite specials.
The bar can be lowered. The bar can be lowered. Usually it's not with technology, though, right? It might be be in human decency, yes, but in technology it normally stays up, which is why there's there's always an outlier. Like the one to me for that is satellite radio.
Yeah.
Which is like, let's compress audio down to 8 kilobits a second and people will and then all of a sudden it has like a gazillion subscribers for 20 years. Now it's probably on its tail end of life now, but that was a lowering of at least audio standards. They made up for it by saying there's more choice available probably for what you could listen to. And Howard Stern didn't hurt, but that was just something that was like, we're gonna take AM and FM radio and make it worse. That's the next step in technology. You normally don't see that, I don't think.
That would be a fun counterculture, though. Like a trend emerging where explicitly bad content is favored.
Isn't that TikTok? No.
Yeah.
I'm showing
basically.
Yeah.
But we're boomers, right?
Exactly. I'm not. Every day I use my phone, I'm like, I've turned into a boomer.
Yeah. I've zoned out of meme culture. A couple of years ago, I've been deep down into it, in the middle of it, but right now, can't compete.
Do it. Yeah. That is a real, when I talk to people about podcasting, though, that is a real concern, might be the wrong word. I keep asking about it, so maybe it's not a concern of anybody's but mine. But, there's a generation of potential new podcast listeners coming who have been raised on 20-second clips being, the way you consume content. I mean, I assume some of it is just, as we're talking about, naturally getting older, right? Eventually, all the TikTokers today are going to be, their generation's version of boomers. And maybe just as you become a boomer, you become more interested in going deeper, down into one subject than, show me 20 seconds of everything. But how do you see that new generation consuming, not just podcasts, but content in general today? Like at some point, it needs to be longer than their current attention spans.
Yeah. What I find interesting is watching the music scene, because when I tried to learn guitar like 15 years ago, there was basically no tutorials on YouTube. There were a couple of people showing some interesting stuff, but right now there are so many insanely talented musicians out there showing you tricks and details and really, really delicate moves that you can do to improve. That's just another level. And what I see is so many young people, despite all this ADHD topic, despite all this shortening of attention span, that do incredibly cool things on their instruments and in their respective whatever they do. Basically, their talent grew insanely fast with young people. That's what amazes me most about changes.
As a musician, how does that make you feel when you see?
Yeah, it hurts.
Yeah,
it hurts, man. Like, there's so many videos that I watch that I think, like, how is that even possible? Like,
yeah.
What do I have to be able to do to compete, dude?
That's the thing, though, right? You don't have to compete. Like, the YouTube might be the thing that maybe showcases it. Like, maybe that's it. They didn't have a venue, but like music is, at least for me, and maybe podcasts I could lump into the same, but like in talking about music, like music is so subjective that there's not really a meritocracy to it. So I don't think there is a basketball player better than LeBron James who's just like undiscovered playing rec league basketball in Ohio somewhere. Like I don't think that's a thing.
Yeah.
But the technically best guitar player on earth might be somebody who's never released any content anywhere. He's just playing in his house in Ohio.
That's also true, yeah.
And so because of that, because YouTube is, again, might be the big equalizer, right? But like whether it's acting, like if you go acting or music, it's about, did you get the break? Did somebody see you that was able to convert it into something, and then you have an audience? Whereas something more like sports is like, listen, if you're good at golf, you'll be a golfer. If you're good at, like, you're at high level, like you're one of the top 200 basketball players in the world, you will absolutely make it as a basketball player. If you're the 133rd best guitar player in the world, that's meaningless as to whether you will go anywhere with it. Maybe if you're like, if you want to be a session player, you can maybe work skill into that, but skill is really, in my mind, skill is really unrelated to, popularity, let's say, when it comes to music and most art, right? Painting, same thing, right? Like, who's the technically best painter on earth? I don't know, but it's probably not anybody whose pieces are selling for millions of dollars.
Yeah. Most likely. Yeah, that's a calming thought, actually, and it's so true. It's so true, because people like the weirdest things, and that's cool about them. That's really cool about them. It's not always quality or being the best or rooting for the best. Like, there's the cool stuff is in the oddities, I believe.
Yeah, but and that's it, right? That's the subculture. That's the niche.
Yeah.
Right. Like, if you want to write a popular song, it's going to be a 1-4-5 change. It doesn't matter how technically good you are at anything. Right? It's
and it's going to be made by the same producers with one major label.
That's it.
And it's going to be a hit, guarantee.
That's it, right? Because that's the act of making a hit is so different than the act of being a great musician.
Right.
They're borderline unrelated. Probably.
That is true. And that also relates to podcasting, basically. What I've seen is the people that are on the front lines are the people that do the best marketing, in my opinion. They, like Stephen Bartlett said it, stacking 1% increments. Each trailer, each guest, each preparation, each thing is going to be 1% better, and that's just product quality. Also in marketing, I like to watch his teasers for when he announces guests, because they are like so very well put together. I got the urge to, I want to watch this.
I can't stand it. It's so much like,
can't?
Just give me one answer. Like,
all right.
Like, everyone is a cliffhanger. Like, you got to give me one payoff and then another cliffhanger.
Yeah, true. Yeah, maybe that's a 1% for him.
Maybe it's just me, but I'm just like, okay, like now you're just really trying to bug me, right? Like, the one thing is, but then the most important thing is, but you know what? If I had never done,
and would you think about that? Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
But again, I'm sure to your point, he knows that I'm the outlier, and that 1% better is not catering to me necessarily, because 1% better gets 100,000 views of not Matt. Although he shares something interesting. I think I heard him say in a video that like less than, it's right around 50%. Only 50% of views come from subscribers for him, which I found quite odd. I haven't really thought about it until this moment. But what do you? Does that make sense to you in terms of how you see, marketing and
Probably,
show discovery?
Yeah. Probably it's always the audiences that you play. I'd say it's like you said like 50% are not his subscribers in each video. That's a lot.
Yeah, like I remember like an interstitial came up and he said, "I'm always surprised when I hear this stat," and whatever it was either only 52% or are subscribed or 52% aren't. But if you're watching this and you're not a subscriber, please click here.
Yeah, that's funny because it's like contrary to a trend that I've witnessed on YouTube, where people try to lower their non-subscriber numbers. Like there's 80 or 90% are non-subscribers, and they want to lower that number because they want people to subscribe.
Right.
It's funny.
Yeah, so that's what he was saying, right? He's like he was subscribed. For him, it's only 50% of people are subscribers that watch his content. And as I say that out loud, I realize I don't subscribe to him. So it is the algorithm that's feeding him to me. It's not that I'm necessarily seeking him out. That's probably the advantage. You mentioned that the video stuff is a lot more popular on this side of the pond. I think like this show goes on YouTube. Not that I particularly expect anybody to consume it over video more than audio, but the reason is because you get maybe some discoverability. You expect that promotion, lazy promotion, might be the way to think about it, right? I'll just put it up and it'll find me an audience. How amazing!
People are gonna find it. It'll spread itself.
Yes, that's just like Diary of a CEO or just like Joe Rogan. All I need to do is put the content out, and I'll get 100 million views because the algorithm.
Yeah, but that's so intransparent. I believe the algorithms, like they feel like they're constantly fluctuating, constantly changing. Nobody really knows how to work with them, and they favor somebody out of chance sometimes, I believe. Do you have any insights on that?
The challenge with relying on the algorithm, in my mind, certainly, like this show isn't designed to make money, right? So I have a little less of a personal stake in how that works, notwithstanding that I would love the right audience to hear the content. It's not taking money out of my pocket when the algorithm changes, let's say. But you do have to, you can't remember if it's Warren Buffett or Charlie Munger, but like you have to look at the incentives, right? So YouTube's incentive is not to help me promote my show or to help Steven promote his show. YouTube's incentive is to show more ads. And so the algorithm is not in service of content producers in any way, and the algorithm is not in service of the audience necessarily, though it is, but those are secondary functions. The reason it's in service to the audience is they want the audience to be happy. But it's only to the extent that a happy audience watches more ads.
True. True.
So I think what probably will evolve from the algorithm standpoint is that it will self-adjust more in this future AI world around, it will learn not even what people like or don't like. What it actually needs to learn is what content will people tolerate an ad through and not leave.
Yeah.
Which is very even different than like, what do they love? What do they hate? Yeah. Right. It's like, what are they engaged in enough at the spots where an ad would be shown that they'll stay till the end of the ad? That's probably what it needs to optimize for. And so if you think of that as what the algorithm's optimizing for, maybe, yes, that's why you build cliffhanger. Wait till he says, right? So maybe that's in service of the algorithm more than the audience. But yeah, does that make sense to you when I think about it that way? As like, that's what's it's actually designed for. It's not designed to help anybody discover anything. It's designed to make more money.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. Because I've recently come across the thought that outrage sells. It's not. We always thought that sex sells, like back in the 90s and up to now, sex sells, and that's what grabs the attention. But seemingly, algorithmically verified, it's now that outrage sells, shitstorms, and people raging.
I mean, I can speak certainly if you look at like the United. So I'm in Canada, but if you look at the United States, it is clear that the most engaging content is people who hate the same people that you hate.
Yeah.
Complaining about the people that you hate.
Yeah.
Even if you didn't even start out hating them, and hate is the wrong word, that's it's the enemy of my enemy is my friend. That's what your friend is today, right? It's people who have a similar view of you against somebody else. That's what a friend is online for the most part. And that's sad. Like, that's also probably why, like, there's this, it's hard to have, quote unquote, real online friends. And there's like a real mental health trend around, like, having friends online doesn't in no way is the same as having, let's say, a real world friend, whatever that means. Talking about being a boomer. But that's because a friend online isn't actually a friend. You don't share like this common interest other than like the hatred of an idea or group or person or whatever. And that's what you're bonding over.
Yeah.
But to your point, that's sticky, right? It's people love correcting people too. I think that could be like a weird subgenre.
Yeah. There's this great take on how to get the right answers. Just propose the wrong ones online.
100%. Like it works with like my 6-year-old.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, if I said, she's 7 now. Sorry, Charlie. If I said, hey, Charlie, how did school go today? Fine. What'd you learn? Nothing. Oh, I bet in math you learned 2 + 4 is 4. No, I learned that it was, and then off she goes. And there's an innate like human thing that you build as a kid where it's like you love to tell people, no, not only are you wrong, but I'm right, and let me tell you how. And
that's
even like
urge.
It's a great sales trick too. Like I tell our salespeople all the time, like if you want to reach out to a prospect and they're using vendor A, never send an email that says, hey, so and so, I see you're using vendor A and blah 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 blah. I go, no, send an email that says they're using vendor B, because they're going to fight the urge to say, no, you idiot, I'm using this other people. What is wrong? And now you've got a conversation going. Like if they correctly identify who you're using, then you're going to hit delete. But if they make a mistake in what they pitch you, now you really want to reply and say no.
Yeah, that's also what all these online games, these apps do. They show somebody playing it really badly so that you think, man, I could do this better. I need to download this app and do it myself.
That's it.
And it works.
Yeah. Obviously there's a little bit of tongue-in-cheek in talking about this, but there's probably some truth in marketing around that too, right? So from a marketing standpoint, and when you're out there trying to reach, in your case, the audience for Auphonic is podcasters, but when you're trying to reach an audience, how much of it is, when you think about your day-to-day, are you actually thinking about it as a game? Like, what game? How am I going to play this game today? And how much of it are you like, you know what? I really wish I could reach out to so-and-so people so we could help them with so-and-so.
That's a great question. I gotta answer this like a little from a side angle. I see the whole life as a game, basically. I grew up playing games. I got a PlayStation for Christmas when I was 6. And I'm much more fond and adept at gaming than I'm at real life, I guess. So for me, it's all like a huge RPG, like with subsets and mini games and skill trees and things that you can do, and like you get exalted reputation with that faction, and you go and farm that item now, and like this is this mini game, and like this is the marketing mini game right now, and these are the rules, these are the pitfalls, is everything that's going on. I tend to see life this way because it's kind of a way of thinking that got burned into my head by all the PlayStations I got. And so that's the way I approach marketing for Auphonic as well. I think, first of all, the product needs to be great. And that's our developers and our CEO that ensure that the product is great. And they're very much oriented on the feedback that we get from the world. Constantly asking people, constantly taking in feedback, thinking about roadmaps, how to improve the product with the limited resources we have to an extent that the product serves as many people as possible the right way. So my job then is to come in and think, well, but how can I show people that this is first a good product and second makes their life easier? And there's various ways. There's talking people to people face to face. There's conferences. There's online marketing. There's B2B cold calls. There's all of these mini games going on, and being basically my own department, I need to discern like which angle to use and where to go, what to avoid, like how are the resources we have spent ideally, uh, yeah, to ensure that we can get the word out there. And what I find like remarkable is wherever we go, like we went to Podcast Movement this August and to the podcast show in London, and it doesn't really matter where we come to, people usually come up to us and say, thanks for having a great product. Thanks for saving my recordings. I had there's so many stories that I've witnessed from people having a catastrophic recording where things went horribly wrong and we still could save it. And that's just, yeah, it makes me thankful. It's really cool. These are cool experiences to get out there and meet people that not only know it but really like it.
Yeah. Was Movement the first podcast movement you went to, this one in August?
Yeah. It was my first time in the US too. There was tons of impressions for me.
Okay, so you were in the fake. I remember so I wasn't familiar with the area where Movement was, but I remember when we were driving in, I was like, oh, this is nice. Like this is like a nice little thing. I could live here. And then I was like, wait a minute, this is 100% fake. Nobody lives here. This is a little fake town just for people attending conventions.
Yeah, with all the statues going on, the Marine Corps and all. So
yeah, it was a very interesting place.
I thought this can't be real. Like we got off the plane and we were driving with our cab to our Airbnb. And right as I got out of the car, there was this huge American flag floating over the harbor, the full moon behind it, a chopper flying by, and some huge bird. And I thought, man, is this a movie or what?
Yeah. So my big takeaway from Movement this year, people have heard me say this if they've been listening this season, is there was just this weird sense I got about AI. And maybe, to be fair, I didn't listen to that many talks. I wasn't there for Steven's talk. So I keyed into that one in particular, just because there's a whole lot of emotions underneath the words that were being saying. But, something is simple, people are like, should we have to disclose that, AI was being used? Like there were moral and ethical questions posed around it. And, my immediate brain was like in the same way that like Star Wars should have to disclose to people that like this wasn't actually shot in outer space and there are no droids and like what do you do? Like, yes, there are effects used on, like, should TV shows have to remind people that like it wasn't actually one long 30-minute camera shot and they actually edited it and cut it up and there were multiple takes? Like I was lost on the premise of like there's this one tool that if we use it we have to disclose it to people. First of all, am I crazy, or is that a sense that seems to be around right now?
I see there's a big difference between the American and European mindset regarding AI. Like a pointy example, like I have never received that dead of a silence as when I talk to the people from NASA podcasts mentioning that I think it's cool that the EU regulates the use of facial recognition AI for governments. They were like dead silent. I thought, yeah, well, there's philosophical differences, obviously. But that's cool and that's great. But what I think is amazing is that people are out there actively looking for ways to use it. Like with the hype building in 2022, I thought, there's a pile of garbage now. There's like a pile of stuff going on. It stinks. Everybody wants to smell it, and nobody knows why. So we're like flocking around this new hype word, and everybody wants to use it. But there's been great use cases found, I believe, for the technology. Because what I also believe is that people slowly come to the realization that it is technology. It is a tool. It's not magic. It's not gonna replace us. Not at least in the nearest future. But it is a tool, and we can use it for various very cool features and stuff to use it for.
Yeah, and today I don't know the answer to this. Forgive me. Do you internally or externally categorize Auphonic as AI? Like if you're talking to somebody in an elevator giving a 30-second pitch on what it is that you do, does the word AI come out of your mouth?
It depends on the industry, to be honest.
Okay.
Yeah, it does come out of my mouth because what I've seen is that many industries, and especially broadcasting now, is awake to the concept. They realize that there is a change in audio processing, and that AI is a thing, and they slowly but surely open their minds to it. So it depends on the industry where it's necessary. Like it was a buzzword. We never aggressively used it because we also saw it as a trend. But we do have AI features. We have AI algorithms. They are all self-trained by our devs. We train them ourselves. We categorize them. We have the classifiers that separate speech and music and all, and the models that work with the denoising. That's all trained by ourselves. So the technology is there. We use it, and it depends on the conversation, basically, if we use it for advertising.
Got it. So I'm going to ask you to put your musician hat on because I think that's the right angle.
I love that hat.
Because I think that feeling that I was hearing come out of people's mouth was around not just artists, people who think of themselves as podcast artists, but podcast artistes, perhaps. Mm-hmm. And I got the sense it was about the purity of the art form kind of thing. With your musician hat on, mm-hmm. If somebody said, "Hey, let's go in. I want to have you guys record this track, and I'm gonna have AI do some stuff to it."
Yeah.
Just like immediately, what does your central nervous system do when I say that?
Yeah, we get this band internal stalemate, I'd say. Our bassist is a really vintage guy. He loves all things vintage, and I'm kind of the progressive tech savvy type of let's try something digital for once, please. But yeah, I think it's a discussion first and foremost. There's no right or wrong. Like with all art, there's way to achieve an end result, and if you can achieve that end result using AI tools, cool. If you can achieve it using all analog or all pencils or all like insanely old instruments from ancient Greece, cool, do it. It's all the creative vision. I'm personally not a fan of removing effort. Like, we need some sort of a video. Let's just use some AI stuff and it's gonna be cool, because that just screams laziness and no vision at all. But if the technology is there, I believe you should use it in your creative vision.
Is it less? You said something there that you're not a fan of removing effort.
Yeah.
Is there something about the creative process where like there has to be some pain for it to be worth it? Like, because in every other area of your life as an RPG player, I assume your goal is you're a big fan of removing effort. But like, I can kind of see it. Like, I'm not a fan of removing effort if I'm trying to make dinner.
Yeah.
Right. Like I'm a fan of removing effort, and like when I want to remove effort, I call Uber Eats, and get it delivered. But like when I'm cooking, part of the pain is having to chop this onion. Right.
That's
like
true.
part of the process is.
But it's also a matter of perspective, I believe, because if you are very much into chopping this onion into correctly sized slices, that's a practice in itself. And there's I don't want to sound esoteric, but there's love in there. You
That's what I
can
mean.
do it like kind of in a meditative state, cutting these onions, thinking about it, putting some effort and love into it. And I believe that there's a huge difference between a frozen pizza slapped into the oven and a frozen pizza carefully placed in the oven and garnished with arugula.
A little bit of
It's the
olive
same.
oil on
Yeah,
top.
yeah. It's the same stuff basically, but it's different for the mind.
Yeah, like I don't want to make that same recipe. I am also, again, in that context, I'm not a fan of removing the effort. I don't want to. I could get pre-chopped onion from the store.
Yeah.
But that's not the point of me doing that cooking in that context, right? Where I'm trying to make a meal and I really want it to be a labor of love, if you will, and whatever. It's very different from it's 5:30. I need a quick meal. I want to eat this and be out the door by 5:45.
Yeah,
In that
there's
case, I'm a
ways
big fan of removing effort.
Yeah, yeah. There's ways of expression to be found, I believe, along the way. And if you don't grant yourself the opportunity to find these ways of expressing yourself, even chopping onions, I think a lot of what life has to offer goes away.
Say more about that. Like, are we at risk of that happening?
That's up to each individual personally, I believe. Like how you want to tackle life. Do you want to live it? You want to experience it, be present, or just on autopilot, buying pre-chopped onions and making like lasagna with it? I don't know.
So, with apologies to the pre-chopped onion industry, thank you for sponsoring this episode.
Yeah, no hard feelings. I love pre-chopped onions. They are not available in Austria, and I would love to have those.
Yes. No. So, okay. But there's a real thing there, right? Which is like there is some part of life or art or making food or whatever that if you a lot of satisfaction comes from making it through the friction, if you will. Right? It's less interesting to make music if there was something where everybody could learn and be a top level guitar player in 30 minutes. And now all of a sudden it's a lot less interesting than if it takes 15 years to hone your craft. And like actually that's one of the core values we have at work is that we make it fun. And I say, ideally fun is tee hee hee, ha ha ha, telling jokes and whistling while you work and all that stuff is great. And then I said, but fun is also the act of looking back on an accomplishment that wasn't easy.
Yeah.
And the example I always use is I learned to play guitar when I was 15. I had an injury. I always played sports, and all of a sudden I had unscheduled time on my hands. But I remember playing scales till my fingers bled.
Yeah.
And at no point was I going, tee hee hee, ha ha, this is so much fun.
Yeah.
But the act of accomplishing that and going through the hard part about it is what made it fun. If it was easy, it wouldn't have been fun at all.
Yeah.
In retrospect, right? In the moment, it's not fun. In the moment, it's hard. But then when you get to the end and you look back, you go, wow, I did a hard thing. That's really fun.
Also, the hardship subsides, I believe. Thinking back, you remember much more positive details about stuff. So it's only, for me personally, stuff's only hard in the moment. And I try to overcome that by thinking, well, what's it going to matter in like 10 hours?
That's I've heard the 10-10-10 model for decisions, right? Will this decision matter in 10 minutes, 10 months, 10 years?
Yeah.
Will the fact that it's hard matter in 10 minutes, 10 months, 10 years? That's an interesting take on that.
Yeah.
Do you have an example? Do you have an example of that where you feel like in the moment that's what you're thinking? That like, you know what? I know this is hard right now, but I know I'm not going to care later.
Sports mostly. Like I've never been a very sporty guy. Never been very athletic. Rather big, like a really fat kid when I was small. But I moved out of that. And last year, actually, I ran a half marathon just because I was trying to see if I can do it. And I've been training and I've been moving along. And on the day of this event, it was extremely hot. it was extremely hot. The sun was shining in my face all the time. It was like it's 13 miles, I guess, in miles terms. And from mile 8 or 9, I believe, before my inner eye, I saw a large pizza and 2 beers. And the thought continued in my head, it's not gonna matter once I've finished. It's not gonna matter once I've finished. And I had this pizza drawing me to it, and I had this thought of, yeah, it's not gonna matter, just do it, moving me along. And that's like a practical example, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, changing gears. What you've had an interesting background, but it's all been around audio, for the most part. What did you were you ever a not audio person?
Yeah. Yeah, like I tried my luck at various endeavors. Like we did a lot of I worked in the automotive industry, testing software systems for like um, emission data of vehicles, and
You work at Volkswagen?
no no, but they kept my job. Not at AVL. But yeah, there was a time in my life where I didn't actually play any music, if that's or I didn't do any audio stuff at all, and I wasn't really happy, I gotta say, because it's kind of in my blood. My cousin showed me Linkin Park when I was 8, and I thought, well, that sounds cool. I guess that's my thing now, and it never changed. Since like more than 20 years later now, I'm still listening to metal, Linkin Park.
Yeah. Well, with that in mind, what would you recommend? So there's probably aspiring professionals that are interested in either the technical part of audio, strategic aspects of podcasting.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for people who are looking to start and build a successful career?
In audio or in general?
In general, I mean, in my mind, I feel like you have topical advice for aspiring audio professionals, but it's probably pretty universal.
I'd say put yourself out there. It's the only way to learn. Like I remember the moment when I mixed my first concert. It was a full analog board. It was a 5-piece band on stage playing synth metal, and I didn't know anything, basically. I knew how to turn on the PA, and that was it. And at some point in the concert, looking down on my console, I thought, yeah, it's starting to sound like something. And I looked up, and some guy tapped me on the shoulder and said, could you please turn on the vocals? And the singer was on stage screaming his head off, like red in the face, and you could hear nothing. And I thought, well, next time I'm gonna be better. So my advice would be, like, put yourself out there, take the risks, take the falls, take the successes. It's a matter of continuation. Keep doing it. It's gonna work out.
Amazing. And how about for you? What's your next step personally, professionally?
I'm gonna stick with Auphonic for a while. It's just a cool company. It's a cool team, a great CEO, great product. I don't see any biggest next steps career-wise, because I really liked the company. Yeah. Also, like musical-wise, we're gonna release some stuff next year in spring. We just dropped our debut album in April. There's gonna be stuff going on music video-wise and all that. That's the next steps. But also it's basically just continuing. Like, next steps is improving on the ones that I've taken so far.
That's spoken like a marathoner.
Thank you.
Yes. Yeah. How do you run a marathon? You take one more step.
Yeah.
I'm trying to weave a path here, because there's a common element. It seems to be about really, you're very interested in building just on top of the next step, on top of the next step, on top of the next step. When it comes to the way you see the world, I'm still stuck on because you have such an interesting view of the world, but you're like, I don't want to take that. I don't want to make that one next step just one more podcast episode.
Mm-hmm.
What would it take for you to dabble in sharing through that medium again, or is that a closed door?
I'm not sure I quite understand the question. Like, do another podcast episode with you, or in general?
No, in general. Like, what would it take for you to be like to stop, no longer be the eternal lurker, to decide that you'd give the medium a shot?
I would say be invited.
There you go.
It's just an honor. It's just an honor, Matt. Actually, it's my first podcast ever.
Ever?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
I was insanely nervous. I couldn't sleep for like 3 days straight.
Oh my God. Well, you're in for a real relief when you find out there's going to be 2.5 people that listen to this. But I did not know that. You did. That was amazing. And I'm sure everybody would agree. So that's a great place to close it because I had no idea. So, Christoph, thank you for your time. That was great. Everybody, check out Auphonic, check out Prine. Where can let's plug the band a little bit. Where can people watch, buy, get merch, find a tour list?
It's prine.org. You can find our link tree there. We got links to Spotify and all the audio players. You can buy merch on Bandcamp. You can get in contact with us on our socials. That's Prinestagram on Instagram, Prine, Pryne. Check it out. I'd love to get your feedback. I'd love to get you guys to listen to it because personally, I like it, and I hope you guys are going to like it too.
All right. We'll include all that in the show notes.
Awesome.
Chris, again, thank you so much for your time. This was great.
Matt, it's been an honor. Thanks so much for having me.
This is different, another round, so much more to talk about. Gonna aim to satisfy with help from CacheFly. Get to it fast. Right here on the Anycast. Make it strong, make it last. Right here on the Anycast. The Anycast podcast, brought to you by CacheFly.